the first is no clear vision for team alignment. What does that mean? Let's begin with not confusing it with the vision of the company. A company has a certain vision and everybody understands that. But what is being told here is an in principle disalignment between the departments. तमाम तरीके के डिपार्टमेंट्स हैं कंपनी के अंदर, उन डिपार्टमेंट्स में आपस में ही अलाइनमेंट नहीं है. वो एक बहुत बड़ा चैलेंज है, क्योंकि until and unless you have that kind of alignment, the holistic vision of the company cannot be fulfilled. So that's the first challenge. The second one is lack of data driven decisions. Very interesting. तो मैंने ना अपने एक्सपोजर में मैंने क्या किया है कि I have categorized the MSMEs into two buckets. The first bucket is who does not have data, well-maintained data. First bucket does not have well-maintained data and they don't know what to do with it. The second bucket has well-maintained data, but they do not know what to do with it. So most of the MSMEs are not able to derive meaningful insights from the data that is there. If it's there or if it's not there, in both the cases, they are not able to derive the value that the data can. So that's another, and that's a major roadblock for their growth. Let's move on to the third one. So bumpy and long sales cycle. Achha, so MSMEs are littered with stories of confusing sales cycle that are excruciatingly long and more stagnant because of internal factors rather than the external ones. So ये मतलब self-explanatory है. ज़्यादातर MSMEs they have a complex sales cycle with too many vanity levels, vanity elements in the funnel that does not actually make sense. So we will probably look at that later. We can move to the fourth point. Okay, inefficient use of tools and technology. So okay, so here's one of my favorite quotes, and okay, so here's a disclaimer. This is my personal quote only. So it's not about using 10% of 10 different tools. Instead, it's about using 100% of one single tool. What most of the MSMEs are doing is tool hopping. We call it software hopping or tool hopping. Let us say somebody wants to create a daily sales report, or let's say a TDL, a to-do list, or a simple worksheet. What happens? You have multiple options. You can use Asana, you can use Trello, you can use Evernote, you can use a simple Excel sheet, or you can use a pen and paper. The challenge is every 6 months or a year's time, these companies, most of the MSMEs, whatever comes to them, they hop, and the change management aspect does not get conveyed fully. What happens with enterprise is that there is a specific segment of change management which makes sure that the 100% of the organization onboards to a single tool that is being used. So if a SaaS or a Salesforce is deployed, then it is made sure that 100% of the people in the organization, all the sections, subsections are using it. But with MSMEs, this does not happen because most of the time the decision makers are too busy themselves to attend to these challenging. So can we have the last one? Uneven customer experience. Abhi, I'm not sure how many of you are being pestered by spam calls or offer barging. So I know one thing for sure: offer barging and spam calls or repeated telecalls will only get you two things. First is a spam grade rating in Truecaller, and the second one is classic abuses with 1-star rating in Google reviews. What would happen if these challenges are not solved? Okay, मैं बताता हूँ क्या नहीं होता. सबसे important चीज जो एक MSME को चाहिए होती है, वो MSME का टैग हट के एंटरप्राइज बन जाएगा, लार्ज एंटरप्राइज. ठीक है, वो नहीं आता है because the scale and growth associated is directly associated with these functions. Second thing what happens is when competition seeps in, they stab you multiple wounds and they kill you by that. बहुत अलग अलग तरीके से competition seep in करते हैं, and if you are not organized, you are dealing with these kinds of growth challenges, you would be one of the first to get killed. The third is industry relevance. With the advent of technology, every 10 years, humongous businesses are being washed down the drains. Everybody has examples of companies like Nokia and this and that has now gone down the drain. So industry relevance is also directly linked to these key growth aspects, because once you are in control of these, you can at the right time take a turn with the relevance of that particular time frame. But what happens with most MSMEs, they are so busy struggling with their own internal challenging, the day-to-day operational and tactical challenges they are so busy solving, that they forgot to have a strategic overlook. They forgot to have a strategic viewpoint on how things are managed. They actually do not have a understanding at a macroscopic level how their industry would evolve, because they are solving problems of today. They are not looking at the challenges of tomorrow, and in this they die. That's very sad, but that's the reality. I mean, that happens. So if you don't want to die, stay listening to us. And if you want to get rid of these, I'll tell you how. So what happened in early 2000s, some businesses in America, they started to understand, these are MSMEs only, that they started to understand that if they are able to streamline multiple departments, they would be able to improve their top line and bottom line revenues drastically. And so they gave birth to a function called RevOps. Now can we move to the next slide? So RevOps, what does RevOps do? RevOps actually में इतना ज़्यादा typical है नहीं. RevOps, let's not go by the fancy name, right? It's a fancy American name. इसको हम लोग ना अपनी हिंदी में समझते हैं क्या है. So essentially RevOps is a core. वो एक तरीके से it's a core around which the rest of the important functions rotate. It's a fulcrum around which marketing, sales, support, all the revenue generating functions would rotate of the organization. RevOps impresses on this particular thing, that if you create a single customer journey spanning across all the important revenue generating functions like marketing, sales and support. So for example, अगर एक कस्टमर के नंबर से कॉल आया है या एक इंटरेस्ट आया है मार्केटिंग के पास, can the same number be used for all the conversation and a story can be created around that particular customer? And how each of that function is adding value in this entire story is what RevOps sit and watches.
RevOps is the function that sits on top of the marketing ops, sales ops and customer service ops, right? And RevOps has its own overall strategy for the organization. This would ideally be something that the management or the leadership want to own, and this is what they want to drive in the organization. So they might have a separate RevOps function. अब ये possible है कि सबके पास ये resources नहीं होंगे to have a separate RevOps function, which is okay. Let's say the owner or the CXO level or the management of any organization wants to create it, they can also run it separately. It does not have to be a separate function as such. RevOps is not something out of the world, rocket science nahi hai. This is something that we've been doing it in different ways. We have just not looked at in a very systematic way. The most important part is all of it is focused on the customer at the center, right? So starting, if you map the entire customer journey, your RevOps is sorted right there.